January 1993, German musical artist Hathaway released his debut single, What is Love? It would eventually become a number one single in 13 countries across Europe and would reach number two in Germany, Sweden, and the United Kingdom. Here in the United States, it peaked at number 11, but it also became a fixture on Saturday Night Live's Roxbury Guys sketches, featuring Will Ferrell and Chris Kattan. The song's refrain is pretty simple, albeit catchy. What is love? Baby, don't hurt me, no more. Now, the song, however, it never took that next step of answering the question that it posed. You can listen to it as many times as you want, and you won't know what love is any more than you did when you started. But there are other things besides this song that may leave us wondering what love really is. We're now flipping our calendars to February, and if you haven't already, you'll be seeing hearts and cupids everywhere. Actually, you may have started seeing them on December 26th. It's also time for jewelers and greeting card companies to earn their keep. Restaurants will be taking reservations weeks in advance. It's the only time of year you can buy chocolate in a heart-shaped box or gigantic stuffed animals holding plush hearts. What drives us to do all this? Why do we try to prove our emotions like that? Well, maybe it's the same question that song was asking. What is love? I think that our world really doesn't know how to define love. I think that's evidenced by the fact that one of our modern ways of defining love is just short phrases. It's a three-word catchphrase that uses the word itself to define love. It says love is love. But I think that leaves something to be desired, because it seems to suggest that any expression or use of the word constitutes love. But what about the spouse who stays in an abusive relationship because she says that she knows he means well, and he does tell her that he loves her and she loves him? Can we agree that even though love is being proclaimed there, that this is not a true expression of love? An addict would probably say that they love the feeling of getting high. An alcoholic may say they love to drink. And for both reasons, they would say that they love the feeling of numbness, the state where they can be taken away from all the bad things. But can we agree that these are not healthy versions of love? The Bible tells us that the root of every evil comes from a love of money. And yet you could make a case that money does not physically or maybe even emotionally harm us. In fact, a love of money might be helpful in some cases. If we focus on amassing wealth, we can easily provide for ourselves and our families. We don't have the stresses of not having enough, which can wreak havoc on ourselves and our relationships. And still, the love of money remains the root of all evil, because it creates in us a spiritual ailment, one that is very hard to cure, and that is greed. We've filled this word love with all sorts of our own definitions, none of which get to the heart of what love is. We use that word in scenarios where it doesn't belong, scenarios that hurt us mentally, emotionally, physically, and spiritually. And all of that does, everything that we've talked about so far, all that does is get us back to that question, what is love? As is always the case when we have questions like this, I recommend consulting the one book that holds our answers. And so let's do that, and let's read Paul's letter to the church in Corinth. If I speak in the tongues of men or angels, but do not have love, I am only a resounding gong or a clanging cymbal. If I have the gift of prophecy and can fathom all mysteries and all knowledge, and if I have a faith that can move mountains, but do not have love, I am nothing. If I give all I possess to the poor and give over my body to hardship that I may boast, but do not have love, I gain nothing. Love is patient. Love is kind. It does not envy. It does not boast. It is not proud. It does not dishonor others. It is not self-seeking. It is not easily angered. It keeps no record of wrongs. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices in the truth. It always protects, always trusts, always hopes, always perseveres. Love never fails. But where there are prophecies, they will cease. Where there are tongues, they will be stilled. Where there is knowledge, it will pass away. For we know in part, and we prophesy in part. But when completeness comes, what was in part disappears. When I was a child, I talked like a child. I thought like a child. I reasoned like a child. When I became a man, I put the ways of childhood behind me. For now we see only a reflection, as in a mirror. Then we shall see face to face. Now I know in part, then I shall know fully, even as I am fully known. And now these three remain: faith, hope, and love. But the greatest of these is love. If we were to make a short list of the defining passages on the topic of love, 1 Corinthians 13 would surely make that list. There are, of course, many others, but this one always seems to stand out. And for good reason. It tells us things about love that will help us this morning as we seek to define it. And so let's review what Paul says. He tells us that love is at the very center of everything that we do. No matter what other amazing things we are capable of, if love is not at the heart of what we do, then none of those things matter. Love is central to a Christian life. And then Paul goes on to this list of the qualities of love that I'm sure that most of us have heard at least once in our lives. He defines love as patient, kind, not envious, not boastful, and not proud. It does not degrade others. It isn't selfish. It is slow to anger. It does not keep grudges. It delights in right things and always seeks truth. It protects, trusts, hopes, and perseveres. And then finally, Paul says that love never fades. And that when we finally see God as He is, and not just through this mirror that we call life, He will make us complete forever. What we have here is a biblical definition of love. Now, it's a good deal longer than those definitions that we throw around today. It's more than a catchphrase. It's more than roses and chocolates. It's more than a hit song. It's even more than a special relationship. If we were to sum up what Paul tells us about love into something more concise, I might say that Paul is telling us that love is putting someone else's good above our own. We are patient and kind because we value someone else above our own needs. We are not envious or boastful or proud because we rejoice in the successes and the accomplishments of someone else more than we do our own. True biblical love is willingly raising someone else above ourselves. And now here's the take-home part of today's sermon, because this isn't just about how we love others, although that's a big part of it. This isn't just about defining a word. It's not even just about how we live. We look at all of these criteria for what constitutes biblical love, and we wonder if it really encompasses all of that. Do I really have to rein in my anger? Do I really have to not hold that grudge, even if I feel justified in doing so? Do I really have to put forth the effort to seek out truth? And the answer is definitely. Because this is really about God's love for us. Each of those descriptions of love also applies to our God. The Bible describes God, actually God describes himself as patient with his people. He wipes away our record of sin. He is gracious and merciful and slow to anger. And God has put our welfare above his own. He came to earth to die for our sake. There is no greater example of love than that. We have wronged our Creator over and over again. We have given him every reason to be angry, to hold us accountable for what we've done, to lose his patience with us. And yet, he is still willing to love us. More than that, he wants us to know his love. He loved us so much that he loved us from the cross, and now he wants us to spend eternity with him to know the fullness of his love forever. If there are times when we feel like this definition of love is too much to live up to, let's remember what our Creator has done for us. If there are times when we find that someone is hard to love, let us remember that our Creator loved us when we were unlovable. If there are times when we find our love has been shallow, let us remember the depth of our Creator's love. The definition of love may be spelled out for us in the Bible, but it was enacted for us as a living example by our God through his Son, Jesus Christ. And so what is love? We don't need a song to tell us. We don't need the material things. We don't need catchy sayings, because our God has shown us love. And all of God's people said,